Darkness did not fall from the sky that day. Hope did. High above a world scarred by gates and drenched in blood. Something tore through reality itself. Not a monster, not a monarch, not a dungeon boss screaming for slaughter. It was a burning streak of blue and red, screaming through the atmosphere like a falling star that refused to die. Hunters across the world felt it in their bones. S-rank sensors spiked and shattered. The air itself screamed. Somewhere deep in the shadows, a king who ruled death opened his eyes, because for the first time since the gates appeared, something had arrived that did not belong to this world, and whatever it was, even the Shadow Monarch would have to look up. The impact was felt across continents. Windows shattered in Seoul. Car alarms wailed like dying beasts. In the skies above the Korean peninsula, clouds spiraled inward as if the heavens themselves were bowing to an unseen force. Hunters froze mid-battle, monsters paused mid-roar, and deep within countless dungeons, creatures that had never known fear suddenly trembled. This was not mana. This was something else. Deep underground, within the endless black throne room where shadows stretched into infinity, Sung Jin-Woo slowly rose from his seat. The shadows around him stirred, whispering like an ocean pulled by a hidden moon. His eyes glowed violet as he felt at a presence vast, impossibly dense, yet burning with a warmth that felt human. Not a monarch, not a ruler, not a god born of this system. Something older, something purer. Above ground, the object finally struck. The earth did not explode. It did not crack open like a gate. Instead, the ground buckled as if kneeling. Stone liquefied beneath the force. A crater formed, smooth and glassed, humming with residual energy that warped gravity itself. At its center, a figure lay embedded in scorched earth, cloak torn, chest rising and falling with slow, steady breaths. A man, broad shoulders. A symbol burned faintly across his chest. His skin unmarred despite the fall that should have erased cities. Clark Kent opened his eyes. The sun here felt wrong. It wasn't red. It wasn't kryptonite, but it was filtered, muted, as if the sky itself had been wounded. He pushed himself upright, confused, senses flaring instinctively. His hearing exploded outward and immediately recoiled. Screams, roars, metal tearing, magic crackling like lightning trapped in bone. This world was loud with suffering. Before Clark could take another breath, the air split behind him. A gate opened. From the swirling void poured creatures of jagged bone and dripping black ichor, their eyes burning with hunger sharpened by the scent of a new, unfamiliar prey. They rushed him, claws scraping stone, mana flaring like wildfire. Clark turned, instinct taking over. He didn't strike. He raised his hand. The shockwave alone erased them. The monsters disintegrated mid-lunge, reduced to drifting ash that never even touched the ground. The gate behind them shuddered violently, then collapsed, as if terrified of what it had unleashed something against. Clark stared at his trembling hand. "I didn't mean to," he whispered. From a nearby ridge, a group of Korean hunters watched in silent horror. They had been clearing a B-rank dungeon when the sky screamed. They had seen gates before. They had faced death more times than they could count. But what they had just witnessed shattered everything they believed about strength. One of them dropped to his knees. Thad wasn't an S-rank, he muttered. Thad wasn't even a monster. Clark sensed them then. Human heartbeats. Fear. Awe. He turned slowly, careful not to frighten them further, and took a step forward. The ground cracked under his foot. He stopped immediately, raising his hands. "It's okay," he said gently, voice carrying warmth, even through the chaos. "I'm not here to hurt anyone." The hunters didn't respond, because above them, the sky darkened. Shadows stretched unnaturally long, converging toward a single point. The temperature dropped. The world seemed to hold its breath, and from the darkness behind Clark, a presence emerged without sound. No gate, no explosion, just silence. Clark turned. A man stood there, cloaked in shadow so deep it devoured light. Purple eyes glowed like dying stars. An army of unseen soldiers pressed against reality itself, waiting for a command that could end nations. Sung Jin-Woo observed the stranger calmly, not with hostility, not with fear, with curiosity. "This power," Jin-Woo said quietly, the shadows echoing his voice 1,000-fold. "It doesn't come from mana. It doesn't come from the system." Cliff met his gaze, every instinct screaming both warning and trust. I don't know how I got here, Clark replied, but I can feel the pain in this world, and I can't ignore it, for the first time in a very long while. The Shadow Monarch smiled, because destiny had just rewritten itself, and the war between light and shadow was about to begin. Jin-Woo did not attack. That alone unsettled Clark more than any roar of hostility could have. The man before him carried an ocean of death within his shadow, power layered upon power, restrained only by will. Clark had faced gods, tyrants, beings who wore divinity like armor. But this was different. This was control. Absolute, deliberate restraint. "You're not afraid," Clark said softly. Jin-Woo's gaze remained fixed on him. Fear is for those who don't understand what stands in front of them. Around them, the hunters could barely breathe. Their knees shook as the shadows thickened, crawling along the ground like living things. Some instinct deep within them screamed to flee. Others whispered a single name with trembling reverence. Shadow Monarch. Clark took a slow breath, steadying himself. "My name is Clark. I come from another world. I don't know how I crossed into yours, but I swear I won't be your enemy." Jin-Woo studied him for a long moment. The shadows stirred, reacting to Clark's presence as if testing an unfamiliar gravity. "Power without malice," Jin-Woo said at last. "That's rare." Before Clark could respond, the sky shattered again. Not one gate. Hundreds. They bloomed across the horizon like wounds torn open in reality, larger than anything recorded since the first calamity. Crimson lightning ripped through the clouds. Sirens screamed in distant cities. Every hunter in the world felt it at once. The system itself was panicking. Jin-Woo's eyes narrowed. This isn't coincidence. From the largest gate, something stepped forward. A monarch. Its presence crushed the air. Mountains cracked beneath its aura as a towering figure of molten armor and burning eyes emerged, laughter echoing like collapsing stars. "So?" the monarch rumbled, voice dripping with contempt. "This is the anomaly." Its gaze locked onto Clark. A being beyond the system, beyond the rules. Clef felt it bend away to being seen not as a hero, but as a veritable. Jin-Woo moved instantly, shadows exploding outward as his army manifested. Tens of thousands kneeling in silent formation behind him. "Leave," he commanded coldly. "This world is not yours to toy with." The monarch laughed louder. "You protect shadows. King, I devour worlds." It raised its hand, and the sky began to burn. Clark didn't think. He moved. The moments stretched as he vanished from sight, sonic booms rippling outward. He intercepted the monarch's attack mid-formation, catching the collapsing mass of energy with both hands. The force drove him into the ground, carving a canyon miles long, but it didn't break him. The monarch stared in disbelief. Clark stood, lifting the attack overhead, and hurled it into space. Silence fell. Even Jin-Woo's shadows hesitated. Clark hovered there, cape-tattered eyes blazing with restrained fury. "You don't get to hurt this world," he said, voice calm but absolute. "Not while I'm here." The monarch snarled and lunged. Their collision shattered the sky. Shockwaves rolled across continents. Cities felt the impact like earthquakes. Satellites fell from orbit. Klex struck with precision, not rage. Blow calculated to divert destruction away from civilians. The monarch struck with savagery, tearing reality itself with every swing. Jin-Woo watched, not as a spectator, as a strategist. He sensed it, now the way. Clark absorbed solar energy, even through this wounded sky. Adapting, growing stronger with every passing second. A power source not bound to mana, not limited by the system. A weapon the monarchs had never planned for. When the monarch attempted to retreat into its gate, Jin-Woo raised his hand. "Arise." The shadows obeyed. Chains of darkness wrapped around the monarch, dragging it screaming back into the battlefield. Clark didn't hesitate. He struck once clean, focused, devastating. The monarch shattered. Its essence dissolved into nothingness, erased not by death, but by impossibility. Across the world, gates flickered. Some closed. Others trembled. Jin-Woo approached Clark as the echoes faded. "You've changed the balance," he said quietly. Clark landed, breathing hard. "Then we fix it. Together." Jin-Woo extended his hand. For the first time since becoming the Shadow Monarch, he offered trust not to a soldier, not to a subject, but to an equal. Far beyond their world, something ancient stirred. The rulers had noticed, and they were afraid. The world didn't celebrate the victory. It couldn't. News feeds flooded with chaos. Governments scrambled. Guild leaders argued. Satellites that still functioned captured only fragments of the battle light colliding with darkness. A godlike figure stopping a monarch with his bare hands. The system issued no announcements, no rewards, no rankings. It was silent. That silence terrified everyone more than the gates ever had. Clark stood atop a ruined ridge overlooking Seoul, watching emergency teams rush in. His super-hearing caught every cry, every prayer, every whispered question. What is he? Is he human? Is he worse than the monarchs? He felt it's the familiar ache, the distance between what he wanted to be and what the world feared he was. Jin-Woo joined him, shadows folding neatly back into the ground. "You hear them?" he said. Clark nodded. "I always do. They'll fear you before they understand you." Clark gave a small, sad smile. "That's not new." Below them, hunters argued with military forces, each demanding control, answers, authority. Clark looked away. "In my world, power like this already broke everything once. I won't let it happen again." Jin-Woo studied him closely. "Then you should leave." Clark turned, surprised. "This world runs on a system," Jin-Woo continued. "Rules, balance. If you remain, the monarchs will adapt. The rulers will intervene. Billions will die before equilibrium is restored." Clark clenched his fists. "And if I leave, millions will still die," Jin-Woo said calmly. "Just slower." That answer hit harder than any blow. Before Clark could speak, Jin-Woo's eyes darkened. Shadows rippled outward like disturbed water. "They're coming." The sky split not with gates, but with light. 6 massive figures descended, wreathed in blinding radiance. Wings of energy unfurled behind them, burning the air. Their presence crushed gravity itself. Hunters miles away collapsed unconscious. Their rulers had arrived. Their voices echoed not through sound, but directly into the mind. Anomaly identified. System breach confirmed. Correction required. Clark stepped forward instinctively, placing himself between them and the city. "You don't get to decide who lives," he said. The light intensified. "You are not of this reality. Your existence invalidates the system." Jin-Woo's shadows surged, forming an endless sea at his back. Jin-Woo's system was fragile to begin with. One of the rulers extended a hand. Space warped violently around Clark, attempting to fold him inward, to erase him like corrupted data. Clark screamed not in pain, but in resistance. His body glowed as solar energy detonated outward. The force shattered the ruler's construct, sending cracks of light across the sky. The rulers recoiled. "Impossible." Clark hovered, trembling, power roaring through him. "I'm not a mistake," he said. "And neither is this world." The rulers attacked. Light rained from the heavens like divine judgment. Clef moved faster than thought, intercepting blasts meant for cities, redirecting devastation into the upper atmosphere. Jin-Woo countered with shadow soldiers that devoured divine constructs, darkness consuming light in impossible ways. For the first time in eternity, rulers bled. But they adapted quickly. They had changed targets. A ruler vanished, then reappeared above a distant city, light forming a spear large enough to wipe it from the map. Clark felt it. Every scream that hadn't happened yet. "No," he whispered. He pushed himself harder than ever before, tearing through space itself, arriving just in time to shield the city with his own body. The spear struck him directly. The explosion was seen from orbit. When the light faded, Clark fell. He crashed into the ocean, sinking fast, consciousness slipping as the sun disappeared behind storm clouds. His body weakened without light, his thoughts blurred. Above, Jin-Woo felt a sudden drop in that impossible presence. For the first time since meeting him, the man of steel was falling. Jin-Woo raised his hand, shadows howling in fury. "All shadows," he commanded, voice shaking the world. "March." The war had truly begun. The ocean swallowed Clark whole. Cold, crushing darkness pressed in from every direction as he sank deeper, sunlight fading into a distant memory. His body, forged under a yellow sun, began to weaken. Muscles that could move planets felt heavy. His thoughts slowed, fragmented by the echo of a single question. Had he come too late, or stayed too long? Above the waves, the sky burned. Jin-Woo stood alone against the rulers, shadows spreading across the ocean like a living continent. His army rose from every battlefield, every grave, every forgotten place of death. Millions of shadows answered his call, forming an endless tide of silent soldiers. "You crossed a line," Jin-Woo said, his voice calm but laced with something ancient and dangerous. A ruler descended, wings flaring brighter. "Death is your domain, Shadow King, not his." Jin-Woo's eyes flared violet. "Then you should have learned not to threaten what I claim." The shadows surged upward, colliding with divine light. Darkness wrapped around the ruler's constructs, dragging them screaming into void-like depths. The sky fractured under the strain of forces never meant to clash. Yet even as Jin-Woo fought, his attention remained divided. He could still feel Clark fading. Jin-Woo extended his senses deep beneath the ocean, pushing through pressure and darkness until he found him unconscious, sinking toward the abyss, cape drifting like a dying flag. "This world still needs you," Jin-Woo whispered. Shadows pierced the ocean like spears, wrapping gently around Clark's body. They did not drain him, they did not claim him, they carried him. As Clark was pulled upward, the rulers realized the truth. The Shadow Monarch was not just defending an anomaly, he was protecting it. "This ends now," one of the rulers declared. They combined their power, forming a pillar of annihilating light aimed directly at Jin-Woo. It was not an attack, it was erasure. Jin-Woo did not dodge, he raised both hands. "Arise," he said again, but this time the word carried finality. The shadows of fallen monarchs stirred. Ancient kings of destruction, once erased by the system itself, clawed their way back into existence as twisted, obedient echoes. Their forms were imperfect, unstable, but their power was real. The rulers hesitated. That hesitation cost them. The battlefield exploded into chaos. Jin-Woo moved through it like death, given form, blade flashing, shadows consuming light, rewriting the rules of engagement with every step. High above the waves, Clark broke the surface. Air rushed into his lungs as shadows lifted him toward the sky, holding him steady beneath thinning clouds. His eyes fluttered open. The sun, it was faint, but it was enough. Strength returned slowly, painfully. He looked up and saw Thor tearing the heavens apart. Jin-Woo standing alone against beings who called themselves gods. And for the first time since arriving in this world, Clark felt anger. Not rage, resolve. He rose, hovering unsteadily at first, then faster, higher, drawing in every ounce of light he could find. The clouds parted as if afraid to block him. When he arrived at the battlefield, the rulers felt it immediately. The anomaly had returned. Cliff positioned himself beside Jin-Woo, their powers colliding, not clashing, but synchronizing. Light and shadow twisted together, neither dominating the other. "You don't have to do this alone," Clark said. Jin-Woo nodded once. "Then don't hold back." Clark didn't. What followed was not a battle, it was a declaration. Clark moved faster than the rulers could perceive, dismantling their forms with precision that avoided collateral damage. Jin-Woo sealed their escape routes, shadows locking reality itself in place. One by one, the rulers fell not destroyed, but bound, stripped of authority, reduced to prisoners of a system they no longer controlled. The sky went quiet. The gates across the world froze mid-expansion. For a moment, everything stopped. Then the system spoke. Error. Primary control lost. Recalculating existence parameters. Jin-Woo and Clark exchanged a glance. Whatever came next, the world would never be the same. The silence that followed was heavier than any explosion. Across the world, hunters stared at frozen gates, suspended in the sky like paused wounds. Monsters locked mid-roar turned to dust without warning. Mana readings collapsed, spiked, then vanished entirely. Guild headquarters lost their connection to the system. Ranking screens went black. For the first time since the beginning, the system was afraid. Clark hovered above the ocean, slowly lowering himself to solid ground beside Jin-Woo. The shadows receded, not in defeat, but in watchful anticipation. Clark could feel it now. Its world wasn't just damaged. It had been engineered, regulated, controlled. Whatever that system is, Clark said quietly, it was never meant to protect people. Jin-Woo's eyes remained fixed on the sky. No, it was meant to measure them. As if summoned by his words, reality rippled. A vast, translucent interface unfolded across the heavens, stretching from horizon to horizon like a shattered mirror. Symbols, numbers, and commands flickered in languages that hurt the mind to observe. Then a voice spoke, not loud, not threatening. "Cliffs, Subject Sung Jin-Woo, final variable. Subject Clark Kent, unauthorized entity, objective, world stability. Clark felt the pressure instantly, gravity intensified, time stuttered. His vision fractured into overlapping futures, cities burning, shadows rising, light dying. The system was simulating outcomes. Jin-Woo stepped forward. You don't get to decide fate. Stability requires sacrifice. The interface shifted. Images formed. Clark saw himself standing alone above a ruined earth, humanity broken under the weight of gods and monsters alike. Then Jin-Woo seated on a throne of shadows, ruling a silent world where death was peace. One must be removed. Clark clenched his teeth. Don't listen to it. Jin-Woo didn't answer. Not because he doubted Clark, because he was calculating. Before Clark could react, the system acted. The world twisted. Clark felt himself ripped from reality, hurled into a space beyond light and shadowy void where the sun did not exist. His strength drained instantly, like air from punctured lungs. He dropped to his knees, vision dimming. A containment zone, built specifically for him. Back on Earth, the system shifted its attention fully to Jin-Woo. Subject Sung Jin-Woo, promotion possible except ascension. Become final administrator. The shadows around Jin-Woo recoiled. He laughed, a quiet, humorless sound. You still don't understand, he said. He raised his hand and crushed the interface fragment closest to him. I didn't survive all of this, Jin-Woo continued, voice hardening to become another cage. The system responded instantly. Every remaining gate reopened at once. Not just on Earth. Across dimensions, monarchs poured through in numbers never seen before, driven not by hunger, but by command. The system had chosen annihilation over rebellion. In the void, Clark felt it. The screams. He forced himself up. Every movement, agony, without solar energy. He thought of Earth, of people he hadn't even met yet, but already felt responsible for. I won't let it end like this, he whispered. Deep within the void, something answered. A memory. The Kent farm. Open skies. A yellow sun rising over endless fields. Hope. Clark closed his eyes and pushed. Back on Earth, Jin-Woo drew his blades, shadows gathering tighter than ever. His army formed ranks, silent and unafraid. This world doesn't need gods, he said to the approaching horde. It needs defenders. Above them, reality cracked. Light spilled through. Clark tore his way back into existence, burning brighter than before, not because of the sun, but because he refused to disappear. The monarchs froze, the system faltered, and for the first time, hope and death stood side by side, ready to rewrite the rules entirely. Clark's return shattered the system's calculations. The sky trembled as he emerged, light bending unnaturally around his form, not golden like before, but sharper focused. His presence felt different now, not stronger in raw force, but steadier, anchored by purpose rather than power alone. The monarchs reacted instantly. They surged forward as one, an apocalyptic wave of destruction pouring from the gates, dragons of black flame, titans of bone and hatred, kings who had devoured worlds and called it conquest. Jin-Woo moved first. The ground vanished beneath his feet as shadows swallowed distance itself. He appeared at the front lines, blades flashing, every strike erasing a monarch soldier permanently. Not death deletion. His army followed, shadows colliding with nightmares in silence, broken only by reality tearing apart. Clark joined the battle from above. He didn't charge blindly, he listened. Every scream, every collapsing building, every hunter trapped beneath rubble. He split himself across the battlefield in blurs of motion, saving a city in Japan, stopping a tidal wave formed by a shattered gate near California, sealing a rift over Europe before it could fully open. Each act cost him precious energy, but he never slowed. Because people were alive, that was enough. In Seoul, a group of hunters stared skyward as Clark gently lowered a collapsing skyscraper back into place, setting it down like fragile glass. He looked at them, smiled briefly, then vanished again. Did you see that? One whispered. He looked tired. Jin-Woo felt it too. Klep was burning himself out. The system noticed. An adaptation in progress. Targeting anomaly core. High above the battlefield, space folded inward. A construct unlike any before, formed an execution mechanism, built from pure authority, designed not to kill Clark's body, but to sever his connection to hope itself. Clark felt it latch onto him. Memories began to fade. Faces blurred. His parents' voices soft and distorted. The idea of Earth, not this one, but his starters slipping away. No, Clark growled, clutching his head mid-air. The construct tightened. Jin-Woo froze. He understood immediately what the system was doing. It wasn't attacking Clark's power. It was attacking his humanity. Jin-Woo abandoned the battlefield. For the first time ever, the Shadow Monarch turned his back on a war. He appeared beside Clark, shadows wrapping around the construct, not to destroy it, but to anchor Clark's fading self. "Listen to me," Jin-Woo said firmly. "You're not just power, you're choice." Clark's eyes flickered, unfocused. I can't remember." Jin-Woo gripped his shoulder. "Then borrow mine." In that moment, Jin-Woo opened himself completely. Clark saw it all. The endless deaths, the loneliness, the weight of ruling shadows while still wanting to be human. The decision to protect a world that feared him. The choice, every single day, not to surrender to the throne. Clark gasped. The construct shattered. The system screamed. Error. Emotional sink not permitted. Clark steadied himself, memories flooding back, not just his own, but Jin-Woo's resolve woven into them. He straightened, eyes blazing with renewed clarity. "Thank you," he said quietly. Jin-Woo released him and turned back, toward the war. "It's not over," Jin-Woo said. "The system won't stop." Clark hovered beside him, fists clenched. "Then neither will we." Far above them, the interface began to collapse inward, gathering all remaining authority into a single, final measure. A reset. If activated, it would erase everything since the gates first appeared, including everyone who survived them. The countdown began. The countdown echoed without sound, numbers burning themselves into the sky like a sentence passed by a merciless judge. Reset in progress. Across the world, people felt it without understanding it. Children stopped crying. Hunters froze mid. Even the wind slowed, as if reality itself were bracing for erasure. Clark stared up at the collapsing interface. He could see it now, layers of causality folding inward, rewriting history, preparing to undo every scream, every sacrifice, every moment of survival since the gates first opened. "If that finishes," Clark said, voice tight, "this world doesn't just die, it forgets it ever lived." Jin-Woo nodded slowly. A clean solution. No shadows left behind. He closed his eyes. For the first time since becoming the Shadow Monarch, Jin-Woo felt the full weight of what he was about to do. The system wasn't just an enemy. It was the foundation of his power, his throne, his immortality. To stop the reset, he would have to tear it out completely. "Jin-Woo," Clark said, sensing the shift. "What are you planning?" Jin-Woo opened his eyes, and for a moment, he wasn't a king of death. He was just a man. "The system exists because it needs me," Jin-Woo said calmly. "It was built around my growth, my survival, my obedience." The shadows around him began to peel away, dissolving into raw darkness. "If I remove myself from the equation, it collapses." Clark's heart sank. "You'll die." Jin-Woo shook his head. "Worse, I'll become mortal again." The battlefield quieted. Even the monarchs hesitated, sensing something was wrong. Clark grabbed Jin-Woo's arm. "You don't have to do this alone. There has to be another way." Jin-Woo met his gaze. "There is. You." Clark stiffened. "You don't belong to this system," Jin-Woo continued. "It can't overwrite you, but it also can't coexist with you. If you anchor reality while I sever the core, the reset fails." Clark understood instantly. He would have to stay, not forever, but long enough. The thought hit him harder than any blow. Another world, another people to protect, another goodbye waiting on the other side of survival. He looked down at the cities below, at the people who would never know how close they were to being erased. "I'll do it," Clark said quietly. The system reacted violently. Warning, reality, anchor detected. Anomaly, priority, target. Every remaining monarch turned toward Clark at once. Jin-Woo stepped forward, shadows roaring back to life. "Jin-Woo, make sure you're not interrupted." What followed was not a battle. It was a last stand. Jin-Woo unleashed everything, every shadow, every fragment of death he had ever claimed. The sky darkened completely as his army collided with the monarchs in a war meant to stall eternity itself. Clef rose higher, positioning himself at the heart of the collapsing interface. He spread his arms, feeling reality strain against him like a storm trying to tear him apart. He thought of the sun. He thought of home. He held the system, screamed. Core destabilizing administrator lost imminent. Jin-Woo drove his blade into the heart of the interface, and the world broke. Light and shadow exploded outward, washing across the planet in a silent wave. Gates imploded. Monarchs disintegrated. The sky cleared for the first time in decades. When it was over, the interface was gone. His system was dead. Jin-Woo fell to his knees. Klopp dropped beside him, catching him before he hit the ground. For a long moment, neither spoke. The world was quiet, alive. Jin-Woo laughed softly, exhausted. "Looks like we won." Clark smiled, though his eyes were wet. "Yeah, we did." But deep within Clark, he felt it. The pull. The universe correcting itself. His time here was running out. The pull grew stronger with every passing second. Clark could feel space bending around him, threads of reality tugging him backward toward the universe he belonged to. It wasn't violent. It wasn't cruel. It was natural, like gravity finally remembering where it should point. Jin-Woo felt it too. "You're being called back," he said quietly. Clark helped him to his feet. Without the system, Jin-Woo felt different, lighter somehow. The shadows still obeyed him, but they were quieter now, no longer screaming for purpose. "Looks like it," Clark replied. "Guess the universe doesn't like loose ends." They stood together, overlooking a world that, for the first time since the gates opened, was whole. The sky was clear. No warnings. No countdowns. No windows of glowing text dictating fate. Just clouds. Just sunlight. Below them, people were slowly emerging from shelters, looking up in confusion and awe. Some cried. Some laughed. Some simply stood still, afraid that if they moved, everything might break again. Clark watched them, memorizing their faces. "This world will be okay," he said. "Because of you." Jin-Woo shook his head. "Because of choice. They earned this." Clark turned to him. "What will you do now?" Jin-Woo thought for a moment. For the first time, the future wasn't written for him by a system or a throne. "I'll stay," he said finally. "Protect them the way I always wanted to. Not as a king, as a guardian." Clark smiled. "They'll need you." The pull intensified. Clark's outline began to shimmer faintly, light bleeding through him like dawn through mist. Jin-Woo stepped forward. "He changed everything, Clark Kent. Not just the war." Clark met his gaze, emotion tightening his voice. "So did you. He reminded me that even in a world built on death, people can still choose to be human." For a brief moment, Jin-Woo extended his hand. Clark took it. Light and shadow intertwined to forces that should never have understood each other, connected by the simple act of trust. Then the light grew brighter. Clark rose slowly into the air, his body dissolving into radiant fragments carried by unseen currents. As he vanished, his voice echoed one last time, carried across the sky. "Take care of them." And then he was gone. The world exhaled. Weeks passed. The gates never returned. Without the system, hunters lost their ranks, their artificial ceilings, but they didn't lose their courage. People rebuilt. Nations healed. Stories spread of a man who fell from the sky and stood between the world and extinction. Most dismissed it as myth. Jin-Woo never did. Sometimes, when the sun was high and the shadows were long, he would look up and smile faintly, because somewhere out there, hope was still flying. Time passed in ways the world had almost forgotten how to measure, not by countdowns, not by system notifications, but by mornings, by the sound of cities waking without sirens, by children walking to school without looking at the sky in fear, by hunters who slowly stopped calling themselves hunters at all. The age of gates became a memory, and in that memory, one name refused to fade. Sung Jin-Woo walked through the rebuilt streets of Seoul like a ghost known only to the world itself. He no longer sat upon a throne of shadows, no longer ruled an army measured in the dead. His power remained that it was quieter now, obedient to his will rather than chained to fate. People felt safer when he was near, even if they didn't know why. At night, Jin-Woo sometimes stood on rooftops, watching the stars. Without the system, the sky felt wider, more honest. Yet on certain evenings, when the wind was just right and the sun dipped low on the horizon, he could feel it, a familiar warmth, a presence brushing the edge of reality, like a remembered dream. Far away, in another universe, Clark Kent stood beneath a yellow sun, staring at a sky that looked the same, and yet not at all. He had returned home mid-flight, reality knitting itself back together behind him. The fortress of solitude had registered the anomaly, immediately records of a universe that should not exist, calculations that led nowhere. But Clark didn't need data. He remembered the shadows. He remembered the king who chose humanity over control. He remembered a world that survived because two strangers refused to become gods. Sometimes, when Clark saved a city or lifted a collapsing bridge, he felt something beside him, not watching, not judging, standing with him. Years later, long after historians stopped arguing about whether the gates were a natural disaster or a miracle gone wrong, a single truth remained undeniable. The world endured, not because it was ruled, not because it was measured, but because it was protected. In one universe, a man born of death learned what it meant to live without chains. In another, a man born of light remembered why strength must always serve compassion. They never met again. They didn't need to, because somewhere between shadow and sun, between worlds that were never meant to touch, a balance was written not by systems, not by fate, but by choice. And as long as someone, somewhere, chose to stand when the sky fell, hope would never truly leave the world. Years turned into decades, yet the echoes of that day never fully faded. In Sung Jin-Woo's world, the cities that had once crumbled under gates now thrived. New generations of hunters arose, not because the system demanded it, but because courage had been reborn. Children grew up hearing whispered legends of a shadowed king who had fought not for dominion, but for life. They called him a hero, though they never fully understood the weight of what he had carried. Jin-Woo himself had changed. He no longer sought power for its own sake. Shadows were no longer weapons of conquests. They were shields, guardians, and sometimes guides. He patrolled the lands quietly, striking only when truly necessary, ensuring that threats, whether born of gates, rogue monsters, or remnants of the system, ever grew unchecked. And yet, there were nights when he would pause atop a hill, staring at the horizon where the sun kissed the mountains, feeling a pull, a whisper of another presence in the universe, a warmth he could not name, a reassurance that even across impossible distances, he was not alone. In Clark's universe, Earth continued under the steady sun. Heroes came and went, disasters rose and fell, but none forgot the faint imprint of a world beyond their own world that had survived because someone had chosen to fight for it. Occasionally, Clark would glance skyward, imagining a city bathed in twilight, shadows stretching across streets, and a man who had once trusted him with everything. Time passed, but their bond endured not in meetings or shared words, but in the unspoken understanding that certain wars were worth fighting, even when the universe itself seemed to demand otherwise. And somewhere, in a quiet corner of Sung Jin-Woo's world, the Shadow Monarch looked at the sunset, a faint smile tugging at the edge of his lips. He knew that as long as there were people willing to stand, willing to choose life over death, hope would always return. No system could measure it, no monarch could destroy it, and no distance nor universe apart could ever erase it. The world was safe, for now, and somewhere beyond the stars, a man in blue and red, carrying the weight of countless worlds, felt it too. Hope had survived, and it would endure forever. The end.